Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In this one we're going to go over the NBA for April 1st. And as you can see, the current odds are on the screen. We're going to start with the Suns versus the Bucks, Phoenix versus Milwaukee. Money line. Phoenix is an underdog at plus 220, minus 270 for Milwaukee Bucks. The spread is 7 points. The Suns are a 7-point underdog at minus 112 cost. Minus 7 point favorites are the Bucks at minus 108 cost. Over under 224.5 at minus 110 cost even. And we're going to go over where the splits and where the money is going. Minus 270. We're going to focus on that, the higher negative, because you have to think like a bookie when you're betting in order to be more successful. Don't think like a bettor. Think like a bookie. But yeah, here we go. 10%, 15% on the betting for Phoenix. Sorry about that. And 10% on the money for Phoenix, on the money line, that is. 85% of the betting on the money line for Milwaukee. 90% of the money going with Milwaukee on the money line. Spread looks like this. 27% going with Phoenix. 32% going with Phoenix on the money. 68% going with Phoenix on the money on the spread. 73% going with Phoenix on the betting. Over under 224.5. 20% going with Phoenix. 17% of the money. Well, 20% going over. 17% going over on the money. 80% going under. And 83% going under on the money. Once again, the over under is even at minus 110. It will more than likely hold that way. But Milwaukee's getting 90% here. I'm surprised Phoenix is not getting more, but Kevin Durant just announced that he is out for this game. So what you want to do when a major player, he's out for a week, so Phoenix's best player. So what you want to do is, their odds pretty much skyrocketed here. I would test this, and they're at this minus 112 sweet spot, especially in NBA. I would go with Phoenix after the Kevin Durant announcement, just to test this plus 220. Just to test that after the Kevin Durant announcement. Just keep that in mind. Over under, the under is dominating in this one. With the over unders, when you join the public, you win more often. When you join the public, you win more often. And the under is getting 83% of the money, 80% of the betting. So I would go with the under and join the public only if it stays at minus 110. If the odds adjust at all, anywhere from minus 110, go with the over. Philadelphia plus 730, minus 1150 for New York. Plus 730 for Philadelphia, plus 14.5 points, minus 110 cost even for the spread. Over under 222.5, minus 112 cost on the over. Minus 108 going under 222.5. Massive favorites are the Knicks in this one. Let's see where the money is going. Let me scroll up. 10%, just like the Phoenix game. 10% going with Philadelphia, 90% going with New York. Once again, always beware of massive favorites. 7% going with Philadelphia, 93% going with New York. 22% of the betting going with Philadelphia. 16% of the money going with Philadelphia on the spread, 14.5 points. 78% of the betting going with New York on the spread. 84% of the money going with the Knicks on the spread. Over under 222.5. Over is getting 75% of the betting and 73% of the money. Under is getting 25% of the betting and 27% of the money. Now, this 90%, that's a lot of money going in the bookies' pockets here. And they're getting only 7% of the betting, 10% of the money is Philadelphia. Now, I would recommend going with Philadelphia just to get that sneaky money. I don't think they're going to do that, only if these odds hold up. Because there's a chance the Knicks could go down to the 900s, negative 900s. If the Knicks go down, if the Knicks continue to go down, that's where you might want to pick New York, because Philadelphia is going to go down as well. But if New York continues to increase, that's when you really need to consider, and this holds up, 90th percentile here, that's when you really need to consider going with Philadelphia. And that could be Very good payday. Now, when the sharps go in, I'm going to tell you now, when the sharps go in, they're going to adjust these odds. Just keep that in mind. But if you're going to go with New York on the money line, go with New York on the spread. There's a large, they love playing around in the NBA, especially this season, with these large spreads, 14.5 points. And the favorites would more than likely cover that. Just keep that in mind. All right. Portland versus Atlanta. Plus 190 for Portland. Minus 230 for Atlanta. On the money line, 5.5 points is the spread. Underdog Blazers are minus 110 cost, same as the favorite Hawks. 5.5 points, minus 110 cost. Over under 238.5, minus 110 cost. Under 238.5, minus 110 cost. All right, let's see where the money is going. 97% going with Atlanta, and 90% of the betting going with Atlanta. 97% of the money. 14% going with Portland on the spread. 20% going with Portland on the spread. 86% going with Atlanta on the spread. 80% going with Atlanta on the spread. Over under. Over is getting 69% of the betting and 71% of the money. Under is getting 31% of the betting and 29% of the money. So Atlanta is getting a majority of the money in this game. They have gone up on these odds. They started at minus 210. Opening odds are minus 205, then went up to minus 210 immediately. Now went to minus 220, now minus 230. Portland went up as well. Now, Portland's not a massive dog in this one either, on the road, which is strange. But look out for Portland could sneak and get this one. They could sneak, but this 97% will not hold up. None of these 90s will hold up. The 90th percentile will not hold up. Neither will this. Well, only because the spread is so low, 5.5 points. They would have to adjust the spread for this to significantly change with bettors. 80% of the money, 86% of the betting. But this 90th percentile will not hold up for Atlanta, which is why I say Atlanta would be a decent pick at home as a favorite. Not a massive favorite, but as a favorite. And I would join the public and go with the over in this one. Let's go to the next one. All right, Golden State versus Memphis. Minus 210 for Golden State, plus 176 for Memphis. 8-point spread at minus 112 cost for Golden State. Minus 108 cost for Memphis. Over under 237.5 at minus 110 cost. Under 237.5 at minus 110 cost. And let's see where the money is going in this one. Favorite is on the road. All right, 61% of the money going with Golden State. 76% of the betting going with Golden State. 24% of the betting going with Memphis. 39% of the money going with Memphis on the money line. 69% of the betting going with Golden State on the spread. 72% of the money going with Golden State on the spread. 31% of the betting going with Memphis on the spread. 28% going with the Grizzlies on the spread. 76% going over 237.5. 73% going over of the money. Under is getting 24% of the betting, 27% of the money. Let's see where the odds will adjust. 61% going with Golden State, 72% going with Golden State on the money line and spreads respectively. And Golden State looks like, I would pick, as it currently stands, Golden State looks like this minus 112 is a sweet spot. Minus 200. And those odds have just changed. They have just decreased. Okay, Golden State's odds have just decreased. So this 61% is not a massive amount, but it's still a sizable favorite. 60%, 61%. All right, so the odds have adjusted for Golden State, and they have decreased for Golden State from minus 210 to minus 200 that fast, real time. But Golden State looks like a decent pick in this one across the board. And as far as the over-under, join the public and go with the over. Let's go to the next one. Toronto versus Chicago. All right, plus 172 for Toronto, minus 205 for Chicago. Plus 5.5-point underdog are the Raptors. 5-point favorites are the Bulls at minus 110 even. Spread cost over under 235.5. Chicago's always in high totals all year long. Minus 110 on the cost on the totals. All right, minus 205 for Chicago. Let's see. Where is the money going in this one? Let me scroll down. 3% going with Toronto. 97% going with Chicago. That will not hold up. But Chicago looks like a decent pick despite this. This won't hold up, but Chicago looks like they'll be quite decent in this game. The spread is where you want to focus on for the most part in this one. 75% of the betting, 74% of the money going with Chicago as a 5-point favorite. 70% of the over is getting the betting. 60% of the money is going over. Let's see. 97% going Chicago. Minus 205. They look pretty safe here across the board. The only way I see Toronto could make this a game, depending upon how these odds adjust. If you see this minus 110 move at all on the spread, that is, go with Toronto on the spread. Chicago looks decent on the ML at home, and the over under 235.5. That is a relatively high. When the sharps go in, they're more than likely going to go under this, depending upon how these adjust. If you see the total decrease while you see the money increase, go with Chicago. We'll go with the under, excuse me. But as it currently stands, I will stick with the over. Magic versus Spurs. Minus 180 for the Magic, plus 152 for the Spurs. 4-point spread with the Magic being a favorite on the road, minus 108 cost. San Antonio at home, 4-point underdog at minus 112 cost. Over under 220.5. Minus 112 cost over. Minus 108 under. Let's see this minus 10. See, these minus 112s hit more so than you might think. This is the first game of the day where we're seeing in real time the minus 112 here as well. Under 220, yeah. Okay, minus 180 for let me scroll up. 99% going with the Magic. Obviously that's going to change. Obviously that will change. This is where I say this is the time of year you need to consider the dogs in these games late in the season, just before the playoffs. You may want to consider San Antonio at home in this game. Over 220.5, under 220.5, over, let's see where the over under is going. 74% of betting going over. 71%, 71%, excuse me, going over on the money. So yeah. If this holds up to 92% of the money going with Orlando on the spread as well. Look out for San Antonio if they continue to be these massive favorites. Look out for San Antonio in this one, only if this holds up. Only if that holds up. If that decreases to the 80s or 70s, for sure, pick Orlando on the road across the board. But let's go with, okay, yeah, the Minnesota Denver game. My bad. I was looking at something else. Plus 130 for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Minus 154 for the Denver Nuggets. 3.5 point spread for the game currently at minus 110 cost even. Minnesota is a dog at 3.5 points. 3.5 point favorites are the Nuggets at home. Over under 231.5 and minus 112 cost. Under 231.5 at minus 108 cost. All right, minus 154 for the Nuggets. 49% of the money going with Minnesota. 51% going with Denver. 28% of the betting going with Minnesota. 72% going with Denver on the betting. 32% of the betting going with Minnesota. 45% of the money going with Minnesota. All right, 68% of the betting going with Denver, 55% of the money going with Denver on the spread, that is 3.5 points. Over under is getting 82%, 82% at 231.5. The odds are increasing. Yeah, they are increasing. Now, if these odds continue to increase, this under is going to get more of the money in the betting. With that being said, if you see the under reaching about 25 percentile, it's got to be over 25, around 30 percentile, then you may want to consider going with the under. But I would join the public in the over in this game. And 49%, 51% going with the, basically just an even, 49% going with Minnesota on the money line, 51% going with Denver. They're above that minus 150 threshold. I would pick, let's see, this is probably going to be another one of those probably close games that we've been seeing recently. A lot of the game winners and things like that. So minus 154 for the Nuggets looks like a decent pick. However, despite the low spread, do not be afraid to pick Minnesota on the spread, only as it currently stands. Once you see the spread start changing in cost, minus 112, minus 115, minus 105, things like that, definitely consider going with the Nuggets across the board. But that is it. I will see you guys in the next video. You guys take care. Pray every day. Join the Patreon. Link is in the description if you want picks and things like that. I'll see you guys in the next video.